What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
Guys, the week is upon us. UFC Freedom 250. It is time to turn all of our efforts and sights to the biggest card of the year coming up this weekend. We're going to talk some news today before we break down and predict each fight on the card midweek. So all of the things that we talk about will be in the timestamps below. They're all going to be related to Freedom 250. If there's a particular topic that you're most interested in, you'll know where to find it. Nick, I think today, though, we start the conversation off with the main event, with Ilia Topuria. Again, as he has in the past, he has changed his Instagram bio to 18-0. You know, he's already saying that he has won this fight. He's got his celebratory pre-fight celebration party set up for the night before at a location in Washington that I don't believe has been disclosed yet.
Right.
He is in our nation's capital right now, and he's feeling as confident as ever. He even went as far as to say on an interview that I saw this morning on X that he knows exactly, not just that he's going to win the fight, but he knows exactly the outcome. It's going to be a first-round finish. He knows the combination that he's going to land to finish Justin Gaethje, and that story is already etched in stone. It's written. It's permanent. He's just almost like a movie star who went away and filmed a movie. He knows what the ending is.
Right.
And now he's showing up to the movie premiere so that the whole world can watch along with him to see the story end exactly as he already knew it did. So to me, this level of confidence is supreme. We haven't seen it since Conor, and maybe some people that watch this show may not understand this reference, but it almost gives me Gordon Ryan back in the day vibes, right? You know, Gordon Ryan, famously the best jiu-jitsu practitioner of all time.
Right.
He used to write in an envelope and seal the envelope when he would compete, and he would hand that envelope to the commentators on these cards that he was on. And he said, don't open it until after the fight's over. Now, what would be inside that envelope? Well, it would be not just that obviously he was going to submit his opponent. He knew that was going to happen. He's
Right.
so much better than everybody else. We knew he was going to sub them. But it would be what type of submission he was going to catch them with. And spoiler alert, if you don't know, it was always right.
That's right.
That's Ilia Topuria. It feels like we have not seen the supreme level of confidence, as I said, since Conor. And it's not enough for him to just win a fight. He wants to paint a Mona Lisa in the octagon, and he's basically saying, tune in on Sunday, tune in Sunday, because you're going to see the most beautiful display of what I already know is going to happen. Thoughts on his confidence heading into fight week?
Yeah, Ilia's confidence is nothing short of incredible. And it's really one of those things where you kind of, it incentivizes you to tune in even more because you're like, let's see if he's actually right about this. We know that he's such a meticulous, calculated guy. He doesn't take fights on short notice. He's always coming in with a full buttoned up game plan. I even love how he approaches fight camps by looking at his own fights first to see what kind of holes in the game that, if there are any, what his opponents will find and what his opponent's team will find, and then they try to figure out how to button those up, patch up any holes that they might have, and then they look at their opponent's fights and go from there. He must see something out of Justin Gaethje, who has given us countless fights and hours in the octagon, so he knows kind of what to expect from Justin at this point of Justin's career. It's so interesting to see what's going to potentially play out. And look, Ilia Topuria hasn't done anything that he hasn't said he was going to come out and do. So if he's saying there's going to be a first round knockout, and that's kind of what he said, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a finish, but he's going to do it with a combination. And that makes you think, okay, he even has the certain shot that he's going to throw ready and dialed in. I don't know what it is. You know, he's got the beautiful 2-3 he landed on Charles Oliveira. When we were breaking this fight down in the deep dive, we said that uppercuts are going to be open and available to hit for him to hit on Justin Gaethje because Justin was getting hit by uppercuts from Paddy the Baddy, which if Paddy can hit him, Ilia can for sure find that same target. But if he's saying he's so confident that this main event on this one-of-one card is going to end in devastating first-round KO fashion, I mean, you kind of have to take his word for him. It doesn't feel like if he was going out there and he didn't really know or he didn't have a full idea that he would come out and make such a statement. But, you know, it is sort of on brand with him. He's so confident, books the party the night before. So he makes the weight, does the ceremonial weigh-ins, and then he goes and has his party. And then everybody that he's ever faced has wound up getting beat. And at this point, he's not just beating people, but he's finding exactly how he wants to do it and getting it done. if we go back to the Charles Oliveira fight, he threw that 2-3, which was beautiful, and that's what ended the fight. But that was also the first combination he threw in the Charles Oliveira fight. So it tells you, like, yeah, there is some real legs to when he says he's got something dialed in and he's ready. He's actually got it, and it's not one of those, just pieces of content that he's creating. Think about Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. Everybody saw the 13-second fight. Everybody saw Conor McGregor bouncing in and out, and then he threw the 2 perfectly timed. And then it comes out a little bit later that there was footage of him training in the back of the arena, and he's bouncing with his coach and finding that exact shot on the mitts, and you're like, oh my God.
Right before the walkout.
He knew exactly what he was going to do, and he went out and delivered. Ilia Topuria has that same set of skills. He has that same confidence and the ability to go get it done. Obviously, if you're somebody at Ilia's level, you know exactly what your opponent's going to do. And if he's dialed in so much to Justin Gaethje's game plan that he sees the final shot already, Justin may be in for a really rough night at the White House.
Well, and the beautiful thing about fighting is that Justin has a say in the matter, right? Ilia Topuria is going to impose his game plan, but Justin Gaethje is the human highlight, and they don't call him that for no reason. He rightfully deserves to be in this fight. He was the underdog against Patty, and he looked very good. Justin has if you look at his statistics, right? 27 career wins, 20 of them come by knockout, only 1 sub, the rest decisions. If he loses, he's getting finished. Justin does not go to decision and lose a decision. 5 losses in his career, 3 knockouts, 2 submissions. Famously, those 2 submissions came in world title fights. So my kind of, sneaking suspicion, if you will, is that Ilia was the submission guy prior to coming to the UFC.
Right.
And Justin Gaethje has only lost world title fights by submission.
Yeah.
Does Ilia Topuria perhaps have a submission up his sleeve for the White House? Now, I think the uppercut is more likely because Justin does get a little wild and a little open. He's not the human highlight for no reason, and that is like a double-edged sword. It's wonderful because it's why all of us love Justin Gaethje, and he's become a multimillionaire off of just the $50,000 bonuses alone.
Sure.
Like if you add up the number of bonuses that Justin's had and multiply it by 50 grand, it's over $1 million.
Yeah.
And that's not even factoring in his pay. So
I'm pretty sure he has more bonuses than he has fights in the UFC.
he does. He has one more because I think one of those fights was a fight of the night and knockout. I think it was knockout of the night, fight of the night, and maybe it was like a really good fight and a late finish. I'm drawing a blank on what it was, but I do know he has 1 or 2 more bonuses than he does fights in the UFC, which is just absurd to think about. So Justin's going to have a say in this. I feel like we have to give Justin his respect. He is a legend of the sport. We all love Justin Gaethje, one of the best fighters to ever compete in the UFC that hasn't become undisputed champion.
Right.
Only lost world title fights to Khabib, who never lost in his entire career, and to Charles Oliveira, who's, one of the best lightweights of all time as well.
And neither of them got Justin Gaethje out of there on the feet. They both took him down and submitted him, and those guys are about as high level of grapplers as the UFC's ever seen.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering, my angle and question to you is, what do you think the chances are? Where would you put it on a scale, or not a scale, percentage-wise, of 0% to 100%, that what Ilia has up his sleeve for us at the White House is actually a submission?
So I don't think so. I think Ilia does like the fact that he's become a knockout artist. And look, whether you came in and got to the UFC through submissions and became a KO artist, or you've been a KO artist from the jump, once you start to let your hands go and you start to get wins via KO, and it's usually the most impressive or devastating knockout of the night. And oftentimes on UFC cards, just look at last night, there's a whole bunch of finishes. And Ilia Topuria still has the ability to make his stand out over everybody else. And he's on big cards these days, right? So I think that Ilia definitely knows what he's going to do, but I don't think he's going to be looking for a submission. I think he wants to human highlight reel, the human highlight reel in Justin Gaethje. And I personally see this coming via striking. I think mostly it's going to come through his hands. That's what he does all the time. I don't see why he would change his game plan all that much as of late. He's just so good at timing. He has a great pressure forward style where he's always inside but defensively really buttoned up. He moves in, he tracks you, he doesn't chase you around the octagon. He figures out where you're going and he finds ways to trap you and then execute some big shots. if he's able to get Justin Gaethje in the placement of the octagon or in the type of pressure that he wants Justin, I could see this plan unraveling perfectly for Ilia. But Justin Gaethje also knows what Ilia is now thinking, and he's saying it's going to be a first round finish. So does that change Justin Gaethje's game plan to maybe get on the bike a little bit more for round one and say, look, he even if he does beat me, it ain't going to come by the way he's expecting it to. It's not going to come exactly how he's predicting it to come out. So I'm interested to see how Justin deals with this new news that obviously Ilia has let the world in on, that he knows exactly how he's going to finish him. Now, obviously, I'm leaning towards it being an uppercut, because I just see Justin Gaethje is very good at getting inside, but he does dip his head. Those tendencies are there, and fighters are very much like programmed. It's all on muscle memory, how you become a good fighter, right? That's why everybody practices the 1-2. Even if you look at boxing, when you watch the highest level boxers in the world, of course they know how to throw jabs, but every day when they show up to practice, they're throwing jabs.
Yep.
And it's all about getting your muscle memory, knowing defensively, you throw your 2, you need to figure out how to roll under it. Or if you like to slip off to the side, you need to know, and your muscle memory is going to wind up like becoming ingrained in you. So Justin Gaethje has his paths that he likes to take, and usually likes to get into dirty boxing, make fights really chaotic, and that's where he shines. But if Ilia knows those things are coming, he can adjust for them, plan for them, and really good feinting could wind up putting Justin exactly where Ilia wants him. And obviously we know Ilia's feints work really well in this sport, especially today, because he fires real live rounds right when the fight starts. He's putting 100% effort into jabs just to dictate the pace and the control of the fight. And then once he does that, he has you biting on every single feint. And that's when we'll see Justin Gaethje give him those tendencies that he's obviously prepared for and his team has taken account of as far as Justin Gaethje's game plan.
Yeah. And so you would put the submission somewhere around 0 to 10%.
Well, yeah. And I'm not saying he won't like take a submission if he has the opportunity, but I just think that Ilia Topuria likes to become bigger and bigger with every fight. He likes to be the guy that puts the statement on the very end of the fight, and he's the main event at this one-of-one card. So like, while everybody does love a nice high-level submission, and I don't predict for you that Ilia can't submit Justin Gaethje, I just think he's going to want to get it done with his hands, because when we're talking about it next week, this time next week, we're going to be talking about who had the best finishes and who did the best, who had the best performance, who showed up the most. And if Ilia goes out there and submits Justin, we've seen other people do that. We've never seen Justin knocked out cold in a world title fight. This would give something new and rare to Ilia Topuria that no other fighter in the 155 division has ever done to Justin Gaethje.
Yeah. So I and again, that was a really nice synopsis. And guys, actually, I'll link to it in the description. There is a full deep dive breakdown that we did on this fight where we explored the avenues that both guys have to victory. So if you haven't checked that out, it's about 45 minutes long, and it's just specifically dedicated to the X's and O's of that fight. And obviously we'll make our predictions midweek. So that's just a little, synopsis. For me, as far as the submission's concerned, I put it at 20%.
Okay.
I don't think that's what Ilia wants. I think he wants a knockout. He wants an emphatic knockout on the White House lawn.
Right.
I also think Ilia is a smart fighter. He knows that, you start a fight, you want to paint that Mona Lisa, right? You want to have that flawless victory.
Right.
Justin Gaethje's not just going to show up and roll over on the White House lawn. He's coming to fight. He said, I'm coming to throw missiles on the White House lawn, was exactly what he said. So things can go real quick from I want to paint a beautiful picture to I want to get a win any way I can.
That's
to,
right.
oh, I'm about to lose. I need to pull a victory out of my you-know-what.
Yeah.
So, and Ilia being a smart fighter obviously knows that Justin's 2 title fight losses were by submission against very good grapplers. If he needs to have that ace in the hole where he pulls that out of his rear end, he will go to that. But I think his preference is to finish it. I am with you. I do think his shot of choice is an uppercut. Now, I will tell you, somebody who thinks that Ilia Topuria is not getting a finish of any kind, and in fact is going to, the fight is going to be won by Justin Gaethje, is Mr. Arman Tsarukyan.
That's
and
right.
He is the second topic of conversation today. Tsarukyan so confident that Justin Gaethje is going to be the winner against Ilia Topuria that he put $1 million on the fight. Now, I had to check what the odds were with our friends over at Kalshi and did a little math of my own. He is going to make $5.7 million, $4.7 million in in winnings, and then plus the $1 million back that he wagered on the prediction.
So you're telling me Arman could potentially make more money from Justin winning than Justin makes from Justin winning?
Yeah, I would think if Justin wins on the White House lawn with endorsements and everything that will come along with it, he will make more than $5 million. But yeah, if we're just looking at paycheck compared to payout for Arman Tsarukyan, you are in fact correct there. That is a very good and astute observation that you made. Now, I want to get into a couple of things here. One, Arman Tsarukyan is clearly rolling in the money. We know his father's a billionaire. We know that he's making a ton of money streaming. He's also spending a lot of money doing what he's doing and keeping up with this lifestyle that he's living right now.
I chalk those up to business expenses, though. He is really doing a lot to market himself, and he's growing everywhere. So, yeah, you got to spend a little money for the private jet fuel, but you know, if you're getting paid when you go to RAF and you're showing up to all these things, you're going viral constantly, all of that sort of persona that he's created online is definitely paying off for him.
Well, and so this is the big concern, right? Because when I saw that, the first thing out of my mind was, oh my God, like $1 million on the fight on the underdog and Justin Gaethje. But then immediately I'm thinking like, hold on, wasn't there a rule set in place not so many years ago that fighters can't bet on, like current UFC fighters can't bet on UFC fights? If you're on the roster, you have to refrain from betting on fights.
Right.
Obviously, the whole thing with James Krause and his gym and the fight fixing, and we just saw the Isaac Dulgarian thing happen. So it's been a very hot and heavy topic of conversation
that has had new rules implemented since all that stuff happened.
Exactly. Now, do guys get on Kalshi and wager $100, $1,000 here and there that are UFC fighters, and probably nobody talks about it? I'm sure that is likely something that happens. But when you're on a live stream with Dean the Great and there's hundreds of thousands of people watching, and then it's been clipped out and millions of people have seen it since then. And, there's a very clear you pushing the button, like bet $1 million on an outcome of a UFC fight, a fight that, by the way, you're probably fighting the winner of. I would imagine that Hunter and Dana and the matchmakers may be getting some calls. What say you about that?
Yeah, well, Arman's so interesting because as soon as he said it, it was like one of those moments where he was still a kid. Because I know he's 29 years old, and his dad is the billionaire. But he was like, "Oh, if my dad sees this, I'm going to be in so much trouble." Kind of like that sort of thing. And if you're a billionaire, $1 million bet, it really isn't the biggest thing in the world. But what's most interesting to me is obviously Arman Tsarukyan is planning on fighting Ilia Topuria. He believes Ilia Topuria is the guy he's going to have to take the belt from. But it's fascinating to me that he thinks Justin Gaethje is going to win this fight, because if Justin wins, then his next fight could potentially be against Ilia Topuria, but not for the belt. So what are we going to do? Are we going to see Justin Gaethje win this belt potentially and then retire on the White House lawn? There's truly nothing left for him if he does go out there and beat Ilia Topuria. I wouldn't suggest that he needs any sort of title defenses to legitimize himself as undisputed if he can beat Ilia Topuria. But if Arman Tsarukyan wants to fight the winner, and it seems like that's the direction the UFC's going, like maybe he'll get a Charles Oliveira rematch, or he's just going to wait and see what happens at the White House before the UFC makes their decision with Arman. It would throw a wrench into things if Justin Gaethje wins, but if Arman sees something that we don't see, and we have to trust Arman, right? He's a high-level fighter. He's arguably the best fighter at the 155 division. Right now, it's Ilia Topuria, but most people would even put him over Ilia's next opponent in Justin as the number 2 guy in the 155 division. So is Arman seeing something that we're not seeing? Does he see a tendency in Ilia Topuria because he's been studying Ilia Topuria and he knows that maybe Justin Gaethje has the answer for it? Or is he just doing this as a sort of a publicity move and sort of the way to slight Ilia Topuria one more time before this fight goes on?
Well, yeah, it could be just a massive troll, right? It could be a massive troll. Maybe he's angling for a sponsorship of some kind. I don't know what his play is there, and I know that $1 million, while it's a lot of money, even to somebody like Arman Tsarukyan, his life is not going to change in any material way if he were to lose $1 million.
That's right.
And so it could be a calculated risk that he's taking. It's almost like a bet hedge. So if I win, I make a ton of money.
Right.
Life is good. If I lose, did the publicity that I got from this stunt, equal or greater, or was it equal or greater to the $1 million that I lost?
Sure.
Betting on Justin Gaethje. So One thing that's really interesting about Arman, and you mentioned it, and I don't want to go too far off topic because we're talking Freedom 250 today, but it's actually almost 50-50 whether Arman, I think Arman for sure is going to be in a title fight in his next fight, but I think it's 50-50 that he fights the winner of the White House fight regardless of outcome, because Justin Gaethje, 38 years old, you slime out Ilia Topuria on the White House lawn, or you win a close decision, and the president or whoever, we don't know who's going to wrap the belt around the waist of the winner, but you get the belt wrapped around your waist, and you finally have that crowning moment. You're a Hall of Fame fighter. You're the human highlight, and now you're undisputed against the guy that everybody thought is a future GOAT. There is no career high that will even come close to matching that.
Right.
Now, does he stick around and, maybe McGregor? Let's see if Conor can beat Max Holloway, and maybe I can have red panty night and one more payday before I go. Possibly. But for me, if Justin wins that fight and everything that comes along with it, the pomp and the circumstance, why would he stick around for a numbered event against Arman Tsarukyan, who's probably a nightmare matchup for him? Like, I think that Arman is like looking at this fight almost from a relaxed state. Like, if Ilia wins, I know he's going to fight Islam. That's what he wants. If presuming Islam gets past Ian Gary, that's what he wants to do. Maybe he sticks around and fights me. If Justin wins, he probably retires. I think my likely next opponent is the Charles rematch. So let me have some fun here, and then we'll set sights on a camp for Charles. It's a really odd place that Arman Tsarukyan is in his career right now, because there's we all think that he's going to fight for an undisputed belt in his next fight, and I think there's a very good argument that undisputed belt is not going to be contested for with either of the two men that are competing for the undisputed belt on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, and what I find so interesting about Arman Tsarukyan making this $1 million bet on this fight between Justin Gaethje and Ilia Topuria is he was also live streaming with Adrian Broner and Dean the Great for both the $1 million being placed and at the gym. They were at Santos Studio, and he was moving around. And it was funny because Arman was trying to be like a student and hoping that Adrian Broner would be a good coach for him and maybe give him some insight from a 4-time world champion boxing mind. But I just feel like he caught Adrian Broner maybe at the wrong time, because Adrian's been on this skid towards, the darker path. Let's just call it that. He's drinking too much, and he would even admit that for you.
Let's say you have to catch Adrian Broner before 10 a.m. if you want him to be coherent, and let's just leave it at that.
Exactly. So Arman's like standing there. He's like, I think that my next fight is going to be against a really good boxer. By the way, his name is Ilia Topuria. He throws hands. So if he does this, what should I do? And instead of giving a lesson as a high-level boxer, trying to help an MMA guy who's clearly friendly with him, he's basically just showing Arman all the ways that nothing Arman can possibly do to him would ever touch him or hurt him. And it's so funny because we see high-level fighters and we see high-level coaches, and very rarely can high-level fighters become high-level coaches. Unfortunately for Adrian Broner, I don't think he's ever going to be in the corner of a world title fight for a boxer. Maybe he'll go corner Dean the Great or something at a Misfits event. But I just find it funny because clearly Adrian Broner can do very high level stuff, even still. Yeah. Forget the fact that he's drinking too much and he's a few years out of the game. He still has those moves.
He can move in there. Yeah.
Yeah. He can absolutely move as far as a boxing standpoint is concerned. But he just wasn't giving Arman what he wanted. Arman's like, okay, so what do I do if he throws it 2? He's like, oh, it doesn't matter. Whatever you do, you can throw that 2 all you want. I'm just going to knock it down. I'm going to catch and shoot. No problem. He's like, okay, but what if we get inside to this situation? He's like, it doesn't matter. If he tries to throw that uppercut, just touch him. He wants to punch you in the liver, block it, go out here. There's nothing you can do about it. And he's just basically just brushing everything off that Arman's trying to ask him. And it was funny because you're watching Arman, who's not only a content machine, but also a student of the game. And he's like, look, I've got a 4-time world champion standing right in front of me. Maybe I should pick his brain a little bit. And instead, they both just visibly got frustrated by both of them asking questions, and Dean the Great chiming in every once in a while to like talk about how boxing's different than MMA. And while I thought the stream was entertaining, I was also equally as frustrated as Arman watching it, because I'm like, dude, just give Arman the answers to the questions that he's asking. Don't tell him how bad you could beat him in boxing. He probably understands that Adrian Broner is a better boxer than him, but that's not what he's asking. He's trying to figure out how to approach, if Ilia Topuria does X, Y, or Z, what should I do? What kind of moves maybe should I implement into my game to better my chances against a high-level boxer? And instead, he just got like a weird shadow boxing sparring type of situation with Adrian Broner that wound up turning into wrestling.
Yeah, what's so funny to me is that Adrian Broner, when Arman was showing him the single leg, he's like, "Oh, you could never do that to me. I'm just gonna bop, bop, bop over the head."
Yeah.
And the first thing that pops in my mind is like, okay, let that run live for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, so Adrian, and I would expect Adrian Broner to have extreme level confidence. 4-time world champion. Why would you not? Adrian Broner is a great boxer and he believes in his skill. He's actually never encountered an MMA fighter at Arman's level.
Right.
And if you just said, look, okay, I get it, Adrian. Like there are just some things in this world you've never understood and you have never experienced. We're going to put on the puffy gloves. You're going to get some MMA gloves. Arman's going to get some MMA gloves. And you're going to have one round of sparring. And Arman's going to try to do that single leg to you. And I want you to throw that overhand and knock him out.
Yeah.
Adrian Broner, as much as we love him as a boxer, would be night in less than 30 seconds. That's when right. Arman Tsarukyan got a hold of him, took him down with that single leg. He would very quickly find that overhand was not there for him. And Arman would be on the back and choking Adrian Broner to sleep in no time flat.
That's right. And even Dean the Great was saying like, okay, they brought that other guy who looks like he's from the same part of the world that Arman's from. And he was like, all right, so I've just come over here. I want you guys to see kind of what would happen in the grappling situations. And Dean the Great resorted to saying like, oh man, if he gets that close to me, bop, 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 I'm going to do that. You know, it's one of those situations.
Okay, well, like, yeah, that's ridiculous.
That's
like,
not in any rule set of any combat sport out there. So let's just take it with a sense of competition in combat sports. And there is nothing these boxers can do. Like, you understand that, yes, there might be a clean shot that you can land, but unless you're talking about heavyweights or you know, anything under about 175, one single shot off a boxer really isn't going to catch a seasoned MMA fighter and knock them out cold, unless they're just wide open and they, you know, kind of call it, you would have to call it a puncher's chance. But if Arman's willing to absorb a shot, and we've seen him get kicked in the head, we've seen him get kneed in the face, we've seen him take elbows to the head, it doesn't knock him out in one single shot. So if somebody were to be boxing him, and let's just say he shot for an outside, a head outside single, and Broner throws one punch to the head, by the time you reset and get your second punch going, you are on the ground now, and now you can't generate any force or momentum or any power from the ground. You are now laying on your back in a world where you absolutely know nothing. And that's why I found that stream to be wildly entertaining, but also hilarious, because they just won't give Arman credit. It's like they don't know he's one of the baddest dudes walking on the planet, and they're kind of just like trolling him a little bit and just messing around with him. And it was just funny to me because he was actually trying to take it from like a student standpoint.
Yeah, they just don't know. Like they're like, I chalk it up. I don't even like get mad at them. It's like that Dean and AB truly don't know what they don't know in that situation. Right. And I think, you know, that was a bit of a tangent there on AB and Dean the Great. But let's be honest, those guys are drawing some big numbers right now. But I wanna veer into the co-main event of Freedom 250, because Dana White said something really interesting this week. And this is not something that I take lightly coming out of Dana's mouth, because I know how consistent Dana has been about who his GOAT is. And his GOAT, his greatest mixed martial arts fighter of all time, and according to Dana, there is no close second, is Jon Jones. Yeah. Now, I know that I think that Jon is the best of all time as well. I get pushed back a lot about the popped tests and, you know, the loss to Dominic Reyes, the Gustafsson 1 fight. I know all of the resistance to saying that Jon's the best fighter of all time. But why is that important for this conversation? Because to Dana White, he doesn't care about any of that. Right. To Dana White, Jon Jones is the best fighter of all time, period, full stop, end of story. That's why this statement is so impactful, because he said that if Alex Pereira beats Ciryl Gane, he will become the greatest mixed martial arts fighter in the history of the world. I don't agree with that. Yeah. But I'm going to give my reasoning here in a minute, but I want to see, are you on the same page as me, or do you disagree, or do you actually side with Dana White on this one?
Well, it's one of those situations where Dana White has always said The GOAT of this sport is Jon Jones. And it's kind of nice to actually hear a different name come up. And while I don't totally agree with Dana White, like I do think that Alex Pereira's record being, I think it's like 12-3 or something like that.
Yeah.
And Jon Jones has like as many title defenses as Alex Pereira has fights in the UFC. It's just one of those things where I don't know if this is coming from a place of like he's frustrated with Jon Jones, and if Jon Jones was still on the roster or still fighting potentially, would this conversation even be happening? We also saw what Jon Jones did to Ciryl Gane. So in my opinion, if we were to play the rules of like, okay, if Alex Pereira wins this fight, he's the greatest of all time, he would have to do it more impressively than Jon Jones did, which is essentially a flawless victory. He walked across the cage, grabbed a hold of Ciryl Gane, and put him out very quickly. So I don't predict for you that we're going to see Alex Pereira be as dominant as Jon Jones against Ciryl Gane. If that happens, I wouldn't have any issue with putting Alex Pereira as the greatest of all time. But as it sits for me, and look, everybody, as Nate Diaz famously said, everybody's on steroids, right? Back in the day, everybody was on them. So Jon Jones grew up in an era where everybody was supplementing. And even the people who say like George St. Pierre and Habib and Anderson Silva, half of those guys have been popped, and the other half, their team have been popped multiple times. So we have to understand that steroids and supplementation of things that are not on the USADA list have always been a part of the sport. And just because Jon Jones maybe got caught with some picograms and has his own issues doesn't exclude him from the GOAT conversation. But it would be kind of nice for that GOAT conversation to take a different aspect, right? Because we've always had the names, George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, Mighty Mouse, even people throw in there, Habib, Jon Jones. It's kind of cool now.
Islam now creeping in there.
Yeah, we're bringing in this new crop of guys. Islam Makhachev, Ilia Topuria, Alex Pereira. Seemingly they're all 1 or 2 wins away from being the greatest of all time, which I thought was going to give us like some resolve for at least a little while so we could breathe and everybody could come to an agreement that so-and-so, regardless of who it is the greatest of all time. But with all these names emerging and all the pound-for-pound list is going to start going like this all over again. If Pereira wins and Dana White thinks he's the GOAT, I would predict for you that he'd be pound-for-pound number 1 over Islam Makhachev. But then Ilia Topuria comes out one fight after him. If he beats Justin Gaethje by exactly how he says he's going to do it, and then goes up to 170 and fights Islam Makhachev, now it's like, okay, no, Ilia is going to be the or the GOAT of the sport. And then if Islam Makhachev defends 1 or 2 more times at 170, he's for sure the GOAT. And if he goes up to 185, which clearly that's what Dana is kind of hinting at, right? Back in the day, nobody was allowed to leave their division and move up and challenge for champ status until the Conor McGregor era. So with Anderson Silva's like 16 title fight streak that he had, if he would have come up after Conor McGregor, he probably would have been gifted an opportunity to go for champ status.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah,
and he was never gifted that opportunity. Conor McGregor changed the game, became champ, and then everybody's goal became champ. And while Dana has pushed back on people leaving their divisions before it's like completely walked through and finished, now he's kind of showing us that like if you can go and collect more belts, you can become the greatest of all time. And I don't know if I fully agree with that because, you know, Ilia Topuria, he didn't have a very long legacy at 145 as the champion. Not a very long legacy at 155. He's already talking about going to 170. I can't predict that if he gets the belt off Islam Makhachev somehow at 170, that he's going to stay there and fight a bunch of people at 170.
No, he won't. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know if what's more important, like running your division and just putting together the most impressive win streak as a champion and defending your belt time and time again, or just jumping up weight classes every time you get a belt so you can, you know, become the GOAT. I don't know, but I will say this in Alex Pereira's favor. He's making the biggest leaps in the sport, right? Everybody knows 125, 35, 45, 55. Those are all 10-pound increments. He went from 185 to 205. That's a 20-pound jump, pretty big jump.
Yeah.
And now he's going from 205 to 265. So there's an even bigger jump right there. And if he's able to take those 3 belts, I would probably put him right there squarely in the top 5 GOAT conversation for sure. But if Dana White's saying he could be the GOAT, it's either because he has beef with John Jones and he doesn't really want John Jones to be his GOAT anymore, or he truly believes that Alex Pereira will be the greatest of all time if he can get this third belt.
For me, top 5 for sure.
Yeah.
Like AP is doing some amazing things, but it all comes down to how you prioritize the GOAT, in your opinion. And this is why the GOAT conversation will never really fully be settled. Because is it, as you said, just collecting belts, 185 up to 205 up to 265, what Ilia Topuria is trying to do right now. And when you think about Alex's career, right? Why did Alex leave 185? Well, he got slimed out by Ciryl Gane.
Correct.
A lot of people don't remember that part of his career, but the catalyst for the move to 205 was a knockout loss.
Right.
So he got the 185 belt. Then Ciryl got his get back, knocked him out. He went up to 205, got the belt at 205. To his credit, fantastic job. But Magomed Ankalaev beat him. Yeah. He had to come back and win his belt back and knock Magomed out to now get this opportunity. So do you prioritize, a loss which caused you to change divisions, and then a gathering of the belt, and then a losing of the belt, and then a regathering of the belt, and now a move up for an interim title? Is that more impressive than, say, a 16 title defense like Silva, or a 13 title defense like Demetrius Johnson, or what John Jones did? Because DJ and Anderson never left division, but let's remember, John Jones cleaned out light heavyweight.
That's right.
And then he moved up years later and easily beat Ciryl Gane for the undisputed belt. This is an interim belt. So, and where does Tom Aspinall fit into all this? He's my next topic of conversation. But, let's say, okay, Alex is now the greatest of all time if he beats Ciryl Gane. What if Dana White and Eddie Hearn and these guys can come to terms, and Tom Aspinall's recovered from his eye injury and he comes back and he beats Pereira?
Right.
Is he now the greatest mixed martial arts fighter of all time, Tom Aspinall? I love Tommy Boy, but I'm not ready to say that he's my GOAT. So to me, I prioritize excellence within a weight class, and then move up. Like what had Volkanovski beaten Islam, he would be in the GOAT conversation. That was an extremely close fight. But had Volkanovski done the unthinkable and actually gotten his hand raised in that fight, and some people thought he should have, he would be in a lot of people's GOAT conversation, and mine as well.
Right.
What John Jones did, what Silva did, what DJ did, what George St. Pierre did. Now, I know George had more losses than those guys did. He lost the belt, got it back, stuff like that. And I'm not dogging on Alex, and I hope Alex can make a run at heavyweight. I think it'll be super exciting.
Right.
But to me, a win over Gane puts him top 5 all time. It does not put him as the GOAT, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's more impressive than what Islam Makhachev's been able to do in his past, 14 fights. He hasn't lost in God knows how long. He has one loss on his record, and that was quite some time ago. The shorts were totally different. There was no venom. There might not have even been Reebok, but when Islam Makhachev lost his first and only
I think
fight.
there was Reebok, but it was here in Houston. I'd have to go back and watch that fight. Crazy enough, it happened here.
Isn't that crazy? But yeah, I think that Islam Makhachev is doing really great things, and he would, as of right now, I do think Islam is the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world, and I don't think beating Ciryl Gane, who, great fighter for sure, but has a limited skill set and hasn't really proven to be the most dominant heavyweight of all time, right? Now, if Alex Pereira was fighting John Jones on the White House lawn and he were to win this fight,
that's the fight for the GOAT. That is the GOAT fight.
That's the true fight for the GOAT. And if John Jones were to win it, then we could reasonably say, okay, he beat the people from when he first got in, he was a young kid, the youngest UFC champion of all time. He beat the people of yesterday's generation, and then he ran his generation and never lost. The Matt Hamill loss, we all know, the 12-6 elbow that he was just dismantling.
Criminal.
And Dana White should still get that turned around. But then he also, started to get a little bit less active as a champion. But he was still around, a little bit less dominant. But remember, he fought DC. That was some great feuding that they had, and he won those fights. And then he comes and he's beating the generation of tomorrow, which I would put in. It would be Alex Pereira, even Ciryl Gane, because while they're not the youngest guys in the world, they are newer to the scene, especially at the heavyweight division. And there's nobody from John's starting days in the UFC or his reign years of the UFC that are still active and competing in the heavyweight division. So I kind of see how that fight could for sure warrant Alex Pereira becoming the greatest of all time, directly stealing the GOAT status from the GOAT. But if you beat Ciryl Gane, a guy that we know had absolutely no chance to beat the GOAT in John Jones, the current GOAT, then, I just feel like maybe Alex Pereira is a couple more fights away from truly getting to the top of that mountain. And I think Alex Pereira not only would be considered the GOAT of mixed martial arts, but one of the greatest combat sports athletes of all time,
no
given
doubt.
his history in other combat sports.
I think he already is that. One of the greatest combat athletes of all time. Him, Cejudo. Let's see what Gable Steveson can do.
Daniel Cormier, Kayla Harrison even gets thrown in there from time to time.
But like what John did, right? That would be like, imagine an Josh Van, right?
Yeah.
Like still do it. Like imagine if Josh Van continues to win
for another 12 years.
For another 12 years, and then a 38-year-old Joshua Van goes up to 135 and beats the champion there. Like that's what, we're talking about. His next fight against Pantoja, like he may lose. Like imagine he wins that fight and then goes on a decade-long reign.
And beats
that's
all of
what
the top
John
10.
did. That's what and that's what Anderson did, and that's what George St. I know George had some losses, but he got them all back. So DJ, these are the types of things that to me factor into the GOAT conversation.
Yeah.
And that is actually why I want to I want to stay at heavyweight for a minute, but move into Tom Aspinall, right? Because he's recovering from his surgery. He's saying that physically he's going to be ready, probably even by the end of this year, potentially.
That's great.
So, but there's complications now with the contracts because Eddie Hearn is his manager at this point. We know that Dana White and Eddie Hearn don't see eye to each other on about anything.
No.
Eddie Hearn has publicly now asked for Tom to be released from the UFC, and Dana White's response to that basically was never happening, because his response was effectively, okay, I'll tell you what, you release Bam Rodriguez so that we can sign him and go make the Inoue fight.
Yeah.
And that's boxing. For those that don't know, Bam Rodriguez versus Inoue is one of the biggest lighter weight class boxing matches that could happen today. And I'll make that fight and I'll give you Tom Aspinall. And I think it was kind of tongue in cheek, because Dana was like basically saying, you see how ridiculous that sounds.
Right.
Why would I just willingly release a fighter on my roster who's a very important piece of the puzzle for my heavyweight division so that he can go to my rival promoter, if you want to call him that, in MVP, and fight Francis Ngannou? Because we know exactly the train that Tom Aspinall is hopping on the minute that the UFC releases him, and that is a one-way trip to Netflix MMA to fight Francis.
That's right.
And both of them would make a boatload of money. I would love to see it, and the world would enjoy watching both these guys get rich and fight each other. But Dana White, I can see his side of this, right? Yeah. When your job is to, as Ronda Rousey says, increase shareholder value for the shareholders of, the publicly traded company that he's, now wielding at least a part of the UFC division of that company, that would be one of the most bonehead moves that you could make. Right. Why would you release a champion who has a potential Pereira fight out there, who has a potential Jones fight out there, so that he can go make business with the lineal heavyweight champion in Francis Ngannou? Right. So, what do you make of all this? Obviously, I don't assume that you think the UFC is going to release Tom, but do we actually see Tom compete again in the UFC?
Well, I love the Eddie Hearn versus Dana White feuding that takes place, and I sure would love to see one day those two guys get into a ring and fight, whether it's the prelim like Dana wants or a main event like Eddie Hearn wants.
Well, one second, why does it have to even be a main event? There's so much streaming that goes on these days.
Right.
Why doesn't Nina Drama just turn on the Kick channel?
Yeah.
And we get Eddie and we get Dana, go to the Apex, throw a mouthpiece in. We don't have to go through all the red tape. These two guys don't like each other. They want to fight. Dana said, we're not going to insult a card by being on the top of the bill.
Yeah.
Why even be on a card at all? You could put it behind the paywall of Aiden Ross's Kick channel, and there you have it.
Yeah, another brand risk fight they could make some money on. But no, my thing is, I'd love to see them do that, and I love the feuding. I think it's bringing a lot of eyeballs to their feud and both of their fighters that will benefit from that, right? Eddie Hearn not only is a promoter, but he's a manager, and Dana White has a full stable of fighters. So I get why they're beefing and feuding, and obviously the boxing leaders and the promoters don't like Dana White White coming in with Zuffa Boxing and basically saying, I'm taking over. And I'm going to, with the help of Turki Al-Sheikh, I'm going to make sure we make the biggest fights possible. And trust me when I tell you, I've got a hold of some of the biggest names, and I'm willing to pay them what they deserve so that they can make the money. My thing is, Eddie Hearn and Dana White, if they could just see eye to eye and become friendly with one another, they could blow boxing out of the water. Those two manning the ship. Now, obviously, you can only have one captain on a ship.
That's right? The problem. You just landed on the problem.
Yeah, land on the problem. I know exactly the issue, but at the same time, all these other old boxing heads that run these promotions and have legitimately run boxing into the ground over the past, couple decades, would have no fighting chance if Eddie Hearn and Dana White joined forces. But of course, that's not going to happen. But I could just see a situation where those two guys could benefit both each other, the fighters that they have signed, the people that they have managed, and the boxing fans alike. Everybody would get the fights that they want to see. That takes two major players in the boxing game and meshes their fighters together. So if somebody doesn't want to play ball with Zuffa and they don't want to promote with Zuffa, but Eddie Hearn's willing to, okay, at least we have the majority of the best fighters in the world and we can make some great fights happen. But, they are adamant about sticking to this feud. They're adamant about competing with one another. So we're going to have to just take every situation as it comes. But my thing that sticks out about the Tom Aspinall situation with Eddie Hearn is he said, he's my managed fighter and I'm not letting him fight for that contract because I think he's the most underpaid athlete of all time. Not just fighter, not just UFC fighter, the most underpaid athlete of all time, which is a crazy statement. But in reality, when you've got a heavyweight world champion, and given the fact that boxing has always been known for paying astronomical amounts to the guys at the very top of the bill, I can see how it would, sort of jog Eddie Hearn's brain a little bit to be like, wait, he's only making under $1 million or $1 million to fight, and he's the heavyweight champion of the world. I can get 20 or 30 million for a heavyweight. I can get 20, 30 million for a non-heavyweight, non-world title fighter.
Well, you think about AJ, right? Yeah. AJ makes a fortune every fight, and it's in pounds, not in USD. So, I mean, it's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Eddie Hearn can't make Tom Aspinall not take a fight. Now, Tom has hired him for his advice,
right?
And I think Eddie's got good advice. But Tom Aspinall, the UFC will ice him if they need to.
And that's the last thing we want to see out of Tom, right? I don't mean to cut you off, but Tom Aspinall broke his leg fighting Curtis Blades, right? And he had to take like 18 months off. Finally gets back in there, and because of his fighting style, his fights never lasted that long leading up to becoming world champion. And of course, he made quick work when he got back in after the long layoff. So it's really unfortunate that we're seeing a guy who, even though he's a heavyweight and he's kind of young to be considered in his prime, he is squarely in his prime now, and we're just burning great time and great prime years off of his career while he's in negotiations. And now it's like an ego versus ego battle between Dana and Eddie Hearn, and he's sort of caught in the crosshairs. And I don't blame Tom Aspinall for being like, yeah, I want to get paid what I'm worth, and I think I'm worth more than what the UFC's paying me. But at the same time, if you only side with Eddie Hearn, and let's just say in a hypothetical situation, he does get cut from the UFC, he's got one fight outside of the UFC that's in MMA that would pay him, and that would be the Francis Ngannou over on MVP. I'm sure Jake Paul would be down to make that fight. But after that one, unless there's a rematch, I mean, you're not talking about anybody else. There's nobody else for him to fight. And then he's going to have to take the Francis Ngannou route, which wasn't very great for Francis, and go over and box people. And now he's got to box lifetime boxers and heavyweight world champions the same way Francis did, the same way Rico Verhoeven did. And those are lopsided. And look, he's one of the best athletes in heavyweight history. He's one of the, guys who people think is underpaid. So I get why he wants to get paid more, but I don't want to see Tom Aspinall give up on MMA so much that he has to go to boxing and take fights where he's clearly not the favorite. He's clearly going to just do it for the money, and then he's going to go get beat, and then he's never going to actually compete in the sport that he's best at, which is MMA. So it's a slippery slope. I don't know how they're going to navigate this, and especially with Eddie and Dana both digging their heels into the sand. They're not willing to budge with one another, and I think that Tom Aspinall, unfortunately, could be an innocent bystander that winds up getting screwed the most out of this whole situation.
Yeah, I think the more likely thing to happen is Tom will just fight out his contract.
Yeah.
I think he's got 2 fights left on his deal. He'll tell Eddie, look, Eddie, I'm going to get some, these are going to be world title fights. They're going to be against big name fighters. Yeah. So I'm going to get more than my base pay. I'm going to get some back. I don't know how they're structuring that with the Paramount deal, but I'm going to go, I think I can beat both of these guys. I'm going to beat them. And then the $20 million payday is there against Francis. Now, let's say he stubs his toe. Let's say he wins the first one and he loses the second one, right? Okay. That $20 million payday for Francis just got cut to 10.
Right.
The UFC ain't giving me even 1 million. So even in the worst case scenario, I can still get the Francis fight. It's not going to be as big as if I come out of the UFC with the belt as well. But, if the UFC has to basically strip me of the belt on my way out the door rather than somebody taking it off of me, it's going to take a little bit of steam off that fight, but it's still going to be a big boy fight, and there's going to be big boy checks that are cut for it. It's likely that if he fights out the contract, he will go fight Francis, and that's why it's got to happen. Now, it's not because of Tom. The time is clicking for Francis, because Francis is pushing 40. So for us to reasonably sit back and say, man, this is going to be interesting, it needs to happen in the next 18 months. So I am bullish on that we see Tom this year.
Yeah.
I think he tells Eddie, look, we got to work this out somehow. I got 2 fights left. I'm going to win them both, and then I'm going after Ngannou. And this time next year, I can be free. Maybe not this time next year, maybe fall of 2027. I can be free of the UFC and I can go fight Ngannou while he's still on the right side of his 40th birthday.
Yeah, and Tom Aspinall is a great fighter. He's a very marketable guy. He actually took his own efforts and made a YouTube channel. It's a successful channel. He does great. He makes fun content. I know that Anthony Joshua gets paid a whole lot of money for the boxing. When you get in that ring and you perform for the people, you get paid a big check. But Anthony Joshua also was managed in a way, and his career was handled in a way that he was getting massive deals from sponsors. So if Eddie Hearn's not happy with the pay that the UFC is giving Tom Aspinall, but there's really nothing he can do about it, maybe he should look at trying to find Tom Aspinall the Rolex sponsorships or the whatever it is, the Bugatti sponsorships, whoever it is that they've been giving to Anthony Joshua and the other guys.
All the fancy sponsors AJ has. Yeah.
Be like, all right, Tom, you know what? I'm going to prove to you that I'm the best manager out there. Yeah, we can't get you out of this contract. Nobody's ever gotten out of a UFC contract unscathed. It's very lopsided. It's in favor of the UFC. They do that intentionally, and you signed for this amount of money. So it's really hard. We don't even have, no matter how good of a lawyer I can find, he's not going to get you out of this contract because the UFC has more lawyers. They have more power. They have more money. And you signed the contract.
And at the end of the day, you didn't sign the contract under duress. You agreed to the amount, and it's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Right. And if Eddie can go, but fight it 2 more times and then we'll get you out of the contract and then we'll get you the big paydays. Even if it is $10 million, that's still significantly more. But in the meantime, I'm going to get you some massive sponsorship deals. I'm going to get you some brand deals that are going to at least keep you afloat.
They'll keep the lights on for you until we can get you out of this thing.
Exactly. Because the reality is if that doesn't happen and he can't fight for Eddie Hearn, and he's not fighting for the UFC, Tom Aspinall's sitting there twiddling his thumbs with no job and no income coming his way. So I think that
collecting AdSense revenue from YouTube, and that's probably not enough to keep up with Tom's lifestyle.
Absolutely not. Yeah, Eddie needs to figure out how he can manage this because I don't think he's going to beat the UFC and Dana White head on in negotiations. He's certainly not going to steal Tom Aspinall from the, especially with the UFC. Look at John Jones. He wanted out of his contract clearly so he could go do the MVP thing. Now Tom Aspinall, the writing's on the wall. We know exactly the path. And Jake Paul wants to be a competitor to Dana White as well. So he's looking at things like, I can't compete with the UFC head to head, division for division. But if I can sign John Jones, if I can sign Tom Aspinall, and I've already got Francis Ngannou, chances are most people would say I have the best heavyweight division in the world, even over the UFC. And Dana White's just not going to let that happen.
Yeah. Perfect place to leave that conversation. Yeah. 2 more quick things as we're just shy of an hour here. One, Sean O'Malley. I want to talk about him quickly, and then I want to talk briefly about the Hokett versus Lewis being scrapped from the press conference and then being added back on. So for Sean O'Malley, we can start there. He basically said that it's not enough for him to just win against Aiemann Zahabi. He needs a knockout. Tim Welch, his coach, said that Aiemann is a little bit slow and stationary, and he kind of compared it to Chito Vera and said that, Sean is got the right style and Aimann's going to bring the right type of fight to get knocked out in this fight. The other interesting thing that Sean said was that he's prepared for outdoor conditions, right? He's trained for humidity. He's trained for rain. He's trained for things like that. And, I haven't seen them update the call sheet statistics yet, but there are things that you can place predictions on as far as the weather is concerned for Kalshi. So it'll be interesting to take a look at that on fight day, not just the fights itself, but like what does the weather do in Washington, D.C.? Because I believe there's a high forecast for rain. And Dana said that the only thing that will stop the fight is lightning. And so let's hope that there's no thunderstorms and no lightning that happens. But brief thoughts on O'Malley training for the outdoor elements, and also Amin Zahabi, according to Tim Welch, being a favorable opponent for him to get a KO.
Yeah, so Suga is a sniper of a striker. He's so high level. He's very precise. He's got some of the best feints in the game. And while, yes, he does look like the kind of guy that doesn't look like he packs a whole bunch of power into his shots, when he was on his rise to the belt and to the top of the division, he was absolutely just a KO artist and finding the nicest shots on people, perfectly timed, really well set up off feints. And now he's saying he's long overdue for a classic Suga knockout.
Been a while.
And he feels like Amin Zahabi is the perfect guy to be on the receiving end of his next highlight reel knockout. And I actually see the same things as Tim Welch. You know, they're seeing how, you know, Amin Zahabi definitely does have good sound defense. His high guard, he's able to block shots well. He does pressure forward a lot, but that has never been something to stop Sean O'Malley from implementing his game. He's really good at using every square inch of that octagon. He can move around well. And we all know that when somebody has a high guard, which Amin does, there are more blind spots that you are putting up for yourself, right? If I put my hands up like this, I can no longer see the camera over there. So if Sean O'Malley's that camera over there, Amin's not going to be able to see him. And those are the type of situations where all those angles that Suga's able to create will make for very interesting shot selection. And I think that Sean really does have a good chance to get Amin out of there. I know it's a 15-minute fight and Amin's very tough, but the output that we've seen out of Sean in the past and the way he's able to control fights, and even though he's an outside fighter sometimes and not the most like pressure forward, get in your face and close distance and get inside, he's still a very volume heavy striker, even from the outside. He dictates pace. He usually sets traps by giving really good feints, and then he's able to score his shots, move off, reset, and engage on his terms once again. Amin Zahabi's going to have to figure out that puzzle, which is very difficult. And that's why I do think that all of the work that they put in, obviously they know how Sean fights best. They know where his best shots can come from. But if they're thinking about things a little bit differently, they're thinking about the humidity, they're thinking about the rain. I think he even said he's going to get his daughter to hold a hose over his head and just hold it while they hit mitts and while they spar and stuff. I think that's pretty funny.
That's funny, yeah.
He was hitting the mitts outside. He said he can't really train for humidity on the West Coast and over there in Arizona like the East Coast.
Dry heat. Yeah.
But the humidity is actually the thing I worry about most, because there is a chance that it rains. It's actually like a 60% chance right now that we will have rain on the day of the fights. But let's just say the rain gets out of the way, the humidity could cause for a slippery mat. And then that changes things a little bit for me, because if you only have a little bit of experience dealing with a really slick mat, you could wind up losing the ability to bounce around and be as nimble on your feet and light as Suga Sean. So I really think that the humidity, the weather, all of that stuff, the bugs could end up playing a factor. But if Suga Sean decided it was really important for him to sort of train outside, train on wet mats, you know, get his daughter to hold the hose, if he can do all those things, I could see a chance where even a couple weeks of that could get him slightly more prepared than anybody else that's potentially not doing it.
Yeah, and I think, everybody's going to have to deal with the same elements, right? So it's, to some degree, it's a level playing field. But you know, with Suga's game being so nimble on his feet, moving around so much, if the octagon is slippery, it could factor in. Last topic of the day, Derek Lewis, Josh Hokett.
Oh, yeah.
When the UFC submitted the list of folks that were going to be at the Lincoln Memorial Press Conference, Josh Hokett and Derek Lewis were the very noticeable two names that were not on the list.
What's up with that, New Jersey?
Yeah, am I right, New Jersey? And so to me, the UFC came out and said this was an oversight, this was an accident.
Yeah.
They are obviously going to be at the press conference, and then they resubmitted the list. Now, my question to you is, was that a temperature gauging, and the fan base was up in arms because Josh Hokett was the most entertaining person at the last press conference.
That's right.
And Derek, while it wasn't the best Derek press conference ever, Derek is known to have some good ones as well.
That's right.
Are they worried about security issues with Topuria? Obviously, if Josh Hokett punches Ilia Topuria and causes the main event to be scrapped, that's a really, really bad thing for the White House card. Is it a liability issue? My question to you is, do you think that the UFC actually scrapped them, and then because of the uproar and backlash, they were like, okay, let's just get some more security and figure this thing out? Or do you think it was a true oversight?
Yeah, I don't think this was a typo. I think they actually were going to exclude Josh Hokett and Derek Lewis from the presser, and then they got a whole bunch of pushback. Like, look, we just saw all this cast of characters fighting on Freedom 250 have a press conference, and nobody performed at all except for Josh Hokett and Derek Lewis a little bit. Like, of course, Ilia decided to stand up and do his thing, but again, one half of that equation was Josh Hokett. So we can't just take the two guys who are the hottest on the mic, they're best on the microphone, both speak English, by the way, as their first language, to take them away from this American card and take away that opportunity for fans to see a viral moment. Remember, this is all about interactions. It's all about engagement. It's all about numbers at the end of the day. The UFC is a business and they want to do big numbers. And if you take Derek Lewis and Josh Hokett off of that press conference card and you don't let them hold a microphone and say what they want to say, you are going to have another press conference on Freedom 250 that falls flat. While I love Alex Pereira, I love Topuria, I love Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley didn't even get asked a question.
Guy didn't even talk.
Yeah, Diego Lopez, no questions asked for him.
Steve Garcia.
Nobody got any questions. Josh Hokett took control of that press conference. And while, yes, it is chaotic, it is wild, you don't know what he's going to say. There's going to be some pocketed rhymes that are coming out, and they're probably going to be a little bit funny, a little bit offensive. But this is fighting. This is cage fighting at the end of the day, and it's a sport, and it's entertainment. Josh Hokett's there to entertain. Derek Lewis is a consummate professional. He's always entertaining. He's always saying the things that people never expected to hear off a microphone, a hot mic held by Joe Rogan, but he's always willing to say the crazy things, deliver, and show up. So I think that the UFC was like, maybe we'll see what the people say. We're going to leave them off, and we'll see how the crowd reacts. They probably got a very negative reaction. They're like, wait, that was a typo. Sorry, we didn't mean to say that. Josh Hokett and Derek Lewis will both be on the presser, and we can move forward now.
I'm with you. I don't think this was a typo. I think that these two were purposefully left off. And hot take, the safest place to put these two might be next to each other, because I don't think they're going to fight each other at the press conference. I mean, they were talking a little smack, but they weren't going at each other like Topuria was going at Hokett, and like Hokett was going at Pereira.
Right.
Derek Lewis is like, look, I don't even understand what this guy's saying. I've never seen him fight. I don't know who he is. My coach told me he's a wrestler.
Right.
Like, Derek's not the kind of guy to fight somebody at a press conference.
No.
And Josh Hokett's real beef is not with Derek, it's with the other folks. So I would think it would be hilarious. They would never do it, but just sit these two next to each other for the press conference instead of the opposite side of the table. Not a typo. For sure they were gauging, and the temperature on that was like, no, we want those two at the press conference. So if you got to increase the security budget, we got some we're in Washington, right? We got some Secret Service. Let's get some of those guys on the stage.
Yeah, and we know Elon Musk and Donald Trump, they've got a team of 1,000 security guards. So let's take a couple of those guys, put them up on stage.
Rogan's got a few hundred himself. So, let Rogan get up there, or some of his security guards get up there.
Yeah, security won't be the issue, but I think that's so funny. Yeah, I think that legitimately the safest place for Josh Hokett would be next to Derek Lewis, because at the end of the day, they're entertainers. They kind of know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they have a true beef. I think that Derek Lewis knows that he's dealing with a guy who's a showman, and Josh Hokett is the guy who is, well, while yes, he may look like a clown to some people, or he may look like a jester, right? He's doing the crazy things, or the Joker, as Conor McGregor used to be referred to as. Certain people can have that stuff fly right off their back. Ilia Topuria is not one of those people. Alex Pereira doesn't seem to be one of those people either. Derek Lewis would be able to manage it okay, but I don't think that Sugar Sean O'Malley should be the only guy sitting between Josh Hokett and Ilia Topuria
and Alex Pereira.
Like, Sean was able to sit cold and sit there and not do anything. I think he even filmed a little bit of the whole chaos that was happening around him, but to sit just like straight faced and not make any emotions whatsoever, when he was probably like, Jesus, there's about to be a rumble to the highest level right behind me, and it's going to amass about 500, 600 pounds of MMA fighters, the best in the world, all right here, and I'm going to sit cool as a cucumber. I thought that was pretty funny, but yeah, I wouldn't put Sean O'Malley in that compromised position again, because Josh Hokett is very unpredictable. We don't even know which persona is going to come out for the press conference. It could be a combination of all three of his personas. He may come out with a different attitude. He may come out with a different guy. And Josh Hokett's just one of those guys. I'm glad that the UFC figured it out and they got him on the press conference, because him and Derek will give you a couple gems, a couple gold moments, and a couple viral moments. And at the end of the day, this is a business, and that's what the UFC is looking for.
100%. Guys, thanks so much for watching this episode. Be sure to tune in. If you're watching this on Sunday night, it will be tomorrow. Monday night, Nick is going live with his Matchmaker Monday.
Oh, yeah.
I recapped the Bonfim versus Mohammed fight that took place after I live streamed it last night. Nick will do a continuation of that tomorrow. He will give his thoughts on the fights and then break down who he thinks each guy should line up with next. So if you were wondering where the recap was from the prior weekend, it was yesterday and it will be tomorrow. Aside from that, all of our sites are on Freedom 250. We will be breaking that down until at least this time next week when we recap it. So make sure you hang out with us all week. We got some good ones coming to you. And until then, have a wonderful day.
Peace.